tell me, we're going to go into implementing class 2, which was helping your clients go from their default worldview into their desired worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted coaching on your love life.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about what is it that you want to create? What is your desired worldview?
I feel finally ready to get back into dating and ideally a relationship. I don't necessarily want to date. I would like to find someone and be in a
Mm.
relationship. I like being in a relationship.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm looking for a really fantastic partner. And I've always found great people. Like I've never had a problem. It's never like it's not like I have a string of bad experiences. My last experience was bad. I mean, it was a wonderful relationship, except for in the end, and I got very betrayed and left and all that. So that's still like I'm coming off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely what's there for me as far as like the worst case scenario, what my biggest fear could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only experience I've had of really ever being betrayed by anyone. My relationships have always been great relationships. So I'd like to find another great relationship. And I think what I'm going to bump up against is the trust aspect after what I just went through.
Okay. Okay. And like, what kind of a relationship do you imagine? Do you want a long-term partnership? Do you want a forever
Mm-hmm.
partnership? Like, what is it that you want?
Mm-hmm. A forever partnership.
A forever okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, what are you finding right now?
Well, I just started getting on dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been maybe a month. And I feel like, and I've never used dating app before. It's my first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting just the amount of sifting, like the amount of time it takes to sift. And then, as a single mom, I don't go hang out at bars or there's not like a lot of, I'm not out, right? So this is how I feel like I need to be meeting people. And I'm just seeing that it takes a lot of time and the people that I'm interested in aren't liking me back.
Okay.
It's like,
Okay.
so partly I'm like already feeling discouraged about the whole thing.
Okay. Okay.
About ready to pay for a matchmaker.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so, tell me, what were your past experiences? So you only had one where you felt betrayed, but like, what were your past experiences in love?
My relationships have pretty much always been long, like a year, 2, 3 years. And I never met anyone that I actually wanted to spend my life with, except for my ex-wife.
Yeah.
And which was a whole transformation of itself to actually be like, wow, I can see myself wanting to be with someone for the rest of my life. Like that was a really big deal for me to even have that experience. And so everybody else in the past that I've dated, they've all been wonderful people, but I'd never wanted to be with them forever.
Why?
Just because it just didn't feel right. Just didn't feel
Why?
like it was the right person. I don't know. There was just a feeling I was looking for to have, like a certainty about somebody, and I never had it until I met my ex-wife. And then
And what was that?
What was
certainty? What was the difference?
Well, part of it, I was doing a lot of Landmark at the time, and I had just an insight about how I'd been in relationships in the past, which was that I'd considered all my past relationships failures because they'd ended, and really getting that they actually weren't failures. They were all very successful relationships. And I think that maybe partly had me be open to, even if it doesn't work out, doesn't mean it's a failure, right? And for whatever reason, I don't even know what I met her. It was just, things just were amazing from the beginning, and I never once questioned my commitment to her.
Okay.
But in the past, I'd been the one that had ended all relationships in the past. I'd never been dumped really before, and this was my first time with her was being dumped.
And what ended them?
What ended my marriage?
No, the ones before that.
just me not being sure that they're who I wanted to be with, and feeling like I just wasn't right. This wasn't the right relationship for me.
Well, was there like a straw that broke the camel's back, or like when did you decide that it was over?
Every single time it was like this long drawn out process for me to decide. Because they're great and everything's good, there's nothing wrong, it just doesn't feel right. Should I try harder? Like, ugh. It was always like the second guessing my own gut knowledge that it just wasn't the right person. There's never anything wrong with them. Everyone was great. It was just wasn't the right person.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would give some thought here to like here's where, and I'll tell you what, and I'll tell it, everybody that's listening to this for sure, like this piece of coaching can take longer than a laser session. Like there's some things you can like laser in on. This isn't always one of them. Sometimes this is like a multi-session thing for us to both like pull out. Yeah. So really kind of the way that I want to like the next step for this, I think, for you, Elizabeth, is to give some thinking to what was it really that didn't feel right? Was it something that turned you off about the relationships that you were in before? Was it that you didn't have compatible values going forward? You didn't want the same things? I think those are my two questions. Did something about them and like who they were turn you off, or was it something about you didn't want the same things going forward?
I feel like the values thing was generally pretty consistent. I mean, it must have been something about them turned me off. I mean, that's why I didn't feel like they were right for me.
Yes. Okay. That's what I want you to think about. What about them turned you off? Yeah.
It was just that I didn't have it wasn't the feeling. I don't know. It just was it feels like to me it was just not a feeling. Like, about them turned me off.
Or what was missing that that if it was there would have turned you on? So
I don't know. I'll have to think about it.
Give some thought to that, and it's okay. Like again, this process can take some time, but that's a good place to start because there's a few things about that. Okay, and then I want to move on to the next question, though. In this process, which is like, what is your worst case? You get into a long-term relationship with somebody, you commit to them forever. Let's say they don't leave you. Let's say that they stay with you forever. What is your worst fear?
That the love is gone and it just turns into like a friendship.
Say that again?
That the love goes away or the passion goes away and it just turns into a friendship.
Okay. And why would that happen?
Why would that happen? Because it takes work to maintain that passion, and if both people aren't doing the work, aren't committed to doing the work, then that can happen. Sometimes, I mean, like I look at my mom's marriage, for example. Like, she loves her husband. They have a great time together. They haven't had sex in a decade. They don't sleep in the same room, but they have fun. But they're fun.
So what's so bad about that? What's so bad about the passion going away?
I think that I know my mom would love to have sex, and she doesn't have sex at all now because she's not having sex outside of her marriage. And I know my stepdad is watching soft porn because we can see what he watches on Netflix. So we can see that he's got some drive that he's doing something with. Yeah. Right? So there's those two of these people that both have sex drives. They don't have any outlet for it since they're in a committed relationship, but they're not having sex with each other.
So are you worried that the other person's not going to do the work to maintain the passion, that you're going to be the only one who does the work?
Or that we both do the work and then we can't get there again or something.
And why would that happen?
I don't know. I mean, I've never been married for a really long period of time. In my one marriage that I did have, I definitely see there are cycles and waves in that. And I believe at this point that you can get back to that. But, you know, I've never been with someone for 20 years. I don't know. Can you?
Well, here's my question. What would be so bad for you about that? Like, what would that mean about your life if that's the kind of relationship that you were in? Like, why would that be so horrible?
Just feeling like we're both not satisfied. I mean, feeling like I'm not satisfying my partner and my partner's not satisfying me, and in that sense, in the sexual sense, I guess. I feel like sex is really complicated. It's always been complicated in my relationship.
Okay. Now I feel like we're getting somewhere. What does that mean?
Well, for me, I've always been the lower sex drive person. And so it's definitely been like, there's been issues with that, like not being able to satisfy them.
And how does that feel?
It feels sucks.
Yeah. I think that's it right there. I think that's the feeling you're avoiding.
Yeah.
Not being able to satisfy them. It's not really about the passion going away. It's like, what if I can't satisfy the other person?
Yeah.
And who do you have to be to satisfy the other person? Who do you think you have to be to satisfy the other person?
Who do I think I have to be? I feel like I have to be maybe something that I'm just not, as far as, like, I feel like sometimes that's something that you can have some control over, but it's not necessarily something you have a lot of control over.
So how does it feel to be somebody that you're not?
Inauthentic.
Like in a relationship, to try to like twist yourself into somebody that you're not to satisfy the other person. Have you had an experience of that before?
Yes.
And how does that feel?
It doesn't feel good. So it kind of goes back to what you were saying on the thing, actually. It's like having your needs met, because you know, I've gone the extreme where I say, you know what, I just am not interested in that right now, and it caused a huge issue in the relationship.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, but then it came back for me. This was my marriage in particular, and it came back for me. But then she'd already made her mind up that we're fucked. And then next thing I know, she's got a 25-year-old girlfriend on the side. You know what I mean? And that's who she wants to be with now. So I think not being able to satisfy my partner and them leaving me for a 25-year-old hairdresser.
And they leave you, yeah. Well, and probably it was easier to be in those relationships where you were turned off before, where you knew at some level you were going to end it because you didn't worry as much about having to satisfy them.
True.
So I think your inner double bind is something around this: I can satisfy them and I have to satisfy them in order for them to stay, or I have to be somebody that I'm not, or I can be myself and they might not be satisfied, and if they're not satisfied, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so that's the double bind you have to start kind of like looking at and challenging and looking at, can I be myself? Is it okay to have can people stay and sometimes not feel satisfied all the time? Yeah. Can I satisfy people and be myself? And so then you can have both. You can satisfy
Yeah.
them. They're not going to leave because they're unsatisfied. And you can be who you want to be.
Yeah.
That's the
Which
kind
I think is why I'm wanting to date men again, because I feel like sex is so much easier with them, and they're so much easier to satisfy than a woman.
Well, that's interesting though, because men typically have a higher sex drive than women, right?
Yeah, but it can be so fast. Sex with women, as you know, it's like hours. It's a whole ordeal. And, because everybody's got to, with a man, and I appreciate that about women, right? When you have women having sex always, almost every time, both people have an orgasm, and it's wonderful. And with sex with men, often women don't have an orgasm. But with somebody like me, it's easier. So sometimes it's like, that's fine with me. I don't need the whole, half an hour ordeal for you to give me an orgasm. So it's easier for me with men, I think, because you can have sex in 5 minutes. As a man's concerned.
Well, and I think, but the question is like, do you, and like men, women, whatever, but are you cutting yourself off from the kind of relationship that you really want because you're scared that, and it's going to happen with a man too, because men are still people, whether it shows up in sex or it shows up somewhere else. If your inner belief is that I can either satisfy them and I have to turn myself into somebody that I'm not so that they'll stay. And honestly, I can't do that forever, right? Because you couldn't do that forever with your ex-wife.
Right.
Or eventually I'm going to have to show up who I am, and they're eventually going to leave me because they're not going to be satisfied with who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't shift that double bind, whether that means you date men or women, dating men might be a defense mechanism that you're using right now to try to get out of that. But it's not like a real sustainable way to get out of that. Again, I don't think it matters. You could date men, you could date women. Either way, like this pattern will show up. So the first step is to start challenging it so that you can be in that kind of relationship and look at like, where else does this double bind show up in my life? Does it show up in my business, at work? Does it show up with my family? Where do you think this double bind started? So that you can see like, oh, this actually is a pattern. It's not just something that we, or maybe there might be nuance to it that we're not totally at yet. But that's kind of the next step with that. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yep, love it.
All right. So I'm going to kind of recap what I did, if I can remember.
Kind of a long one.
How we went through all that, and then just let me know if you have any follow-up questions, Elizabeth, about the process that I took you through. And I'd love to hear also any like ahas or takeaways that you had from that. So, okay. So I started off asking like what she wanted. Obviously I ask why a lot. We looked at the past because the past is going to show you their default worldview, right? Like their default worldview can show up. It's going to show up in a number of different ways, in their past. So you're going to start to see what those patterns are. And you can see ways in which their comfort zone was one or the other. So when you look at the double bind, you can see that people's comfort zone is their current situation. So like for Elizabeth, when we came up to, with the, I can satisfy them or I can be myself in this scenario, looking at the past or looking at the present, it would be the comfort zone. The default right now is, I want to be who I want to be. And honestly, it was that probably through the relationship with the ex-wife, and then also through even it showed up a little bit differently in the relationships before that. But going into the past will help you kind of understand a little bit what that default worldview is a little bit better, so that you can look at what is it that you want going forward. Then I asked the question of what is it that you're most afraid of in getting what you want? And noticed how I also framed it like, it's not about being left, right? Because like people kind of automatically go to, I'm afraid that I'm going to be left. But that's not really, it's like if people want money, well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose all the money. That's not really what they're afraid of. They're more afraid of like, that's the comfort zone. Wherever you are right now, if you're single, if you, don't have as much money as you want, being left, not having that, losing that, that's the comfort zone. So even though it sucks, Like there's something not uncomfortable about it. So we want to look at what is the fear in getting what you want and keeping it. And then the next question, okay, so with Elizabeth right here, what I did too was that, we looked at like, what's the passion? And I don't know, there was something about, I guess, maybe Elizabeth's sort of like tone of voice that I was like, that doesn't feel like, it's not super emotionally charged. Like there's something else. Like, why is that passion so important? What is it? What's the meaning of that passion? And I think for some people, it truly is that. Like they really need that. But I was just trying to listen to Elizabeth's tone of voice here to find out, is there something, what's the meaning that she's making that? And so as I kind of dug a little bit deeper, it really is about like, it's not really her needing that. It's about the other person in the relationship needing that and her not being able to give that. And then what that means about her and what that means about the relationship. And then from there, that was easier for us to start to see that double bind, what the two choices were. So that's kind of the process that I took you through, Elizabeth. Do you have any thoughts, questions, takeaways from that?
No, the only thing that just had popped up right now is one of the things, like with passion, I feel like while I had so much passion for my marriage and so much passion for my wife, like I just adored her. I loved her to pieces. And it just didn't always show up in the sexual way. And so it's interesting just to see that, like, there's more, I mean, there's obviously more for me to get to, but that just popped up for me. But no, the whole thing was really good because I knew sex was a part of it. I hadn't put together that's what I knew, and then I knew there was a defense mechanism on why I wanted to date men. I hadn't really put that together. So, but yeah, I didn't really like about not satisfying and can't be myself and how that's going to show up in not just sex but other areas too.
Yeah. Do you think that it's possible that you had a lower sex drive, not just because you had a lower sex drive, but because that was sort of a defense mechanism where it's like, if I keep that part of myself a little bit closed off, I feel a little bit safer?
Yes, because I definitely, sex has always been in the past way easier for me in a casual relationship. I feel like when I love someone, there's something that does that kind of closes me down, and it must be a security thing.
Yeah. And so then, of course, it's going to be, and if you equate that with them being satisfied, of course, that's going to be it's like, and so you want to look at too, like, why is it hard for you to open up there? Like there's kind of some sort of double bind inside of that too that can be explored. So that's why this is, I talk a lot about laser coaching. There's a lot of things you can laser coach. This isn't really one of them. This is a longer term kind of relationship coaching process. So yeah, well, thank you for being the volunteer, Elizabeth. Anything else you want to share or
no,
any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, I will see you in the Facebook group. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye.